Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
The floorboards groaned under heavy footsteps. Leora, keen, jolted awake, her heart hammering against her ribs. The red numbers on her alarm clock glowed 2:03 a.m. She pressed her ear to the pillow, listening to the familiar sounds of the old house settling. But these footsteps moved with purpose. Her bedroom door exploded open. "Get up!" Calder's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Her older brother filled the doorway, his 22-year-old frame blocking out the hall light. "Get the hell up!" Leora scrambled backward against her headboard. "Calder, what are you?" "Shut up!" His hands grabbed her arms, yanking her from the tangled sheets. Her bare feet hit the cold hardwood floor. "Just shut your lying mouth." "Let go of me." She twisted in his grip, but Calder had always been stronger. His fingers dug into her biceps as he dragged her toward the door. "You think I don't know?" His breath reeked of beer and rage. "You think I'm stupid?" Leora's mind raced. Know what? She'd been asleep 20 seconds ago. Her thin pajama pants caught on the doorframe as he pulled her into the hallway. "Calder, please." "Don't." He spun around, his face inches from hers. In the dim light, his eyes looked wild, unfocused. "Don't pretend you don't know what you did." The stairs creaked under their combined weight as he forced her down. Each step sent jolts of pain through her bare heels. Behind them, she heard movement, her parents' bedroom door opening. "What's happening?" Ruth Keene's voice drifted from upstairs, but she made no move to follow them. Calder didn't answer. He hauled Leora through the living room, past the family photos that never included her, toward the front door. Her shoulder slammed into the doorframe. "Stop! You're hurting me." "Good." The deadbolt clicked. The door swung open. February air hit her like a slap. "Maybe you'll learn something." He shoved her hard. She stumbled forward, her knees hitting the wet grass of the front yard. The cold Oregon night soaked through her clothes in seconds. She rolled over, looking up at her brother's silhouette in the doorway. "Calder, I don't understand." "You're not family." The words exploded from him. "You never were. You think we wanted you here? You think any of us ever wanted you?" The porch light flickered on. Ruth and Nolan Keene appeared at the upstairs window, their faces pale behind the glass. They watched like spectators at a play. Neither moved toward the stairs. Leora pushed herself to her knees. The grass was slick with dew and old snow. Her hands shook from cold or shock, she couldn't tell. "Mom? Dad?" They didn't answer. They just stood there, watching their son tear her apart. "Look at them." Calder gestured wildly at the window. "Look how they're just standing there." "You know why?" "Because they agree with me." "That's not true." But even as she said it, Leora felt the lie stick in her throat. They weren't coming down. They weren't stopping him. 18 years of feeding you, clothing you, putting up with your drama. Calder stepped out onto the porch. 18 years of pretending you belonged. "I do belong here. This is my home." His laugh was ugly. "Your home? You really think this is your home?" From across the street, a light came on. Martha Dellinger's house. The elderly widow often couldn't sleep, spending her nights reading by the window. Tonight she was watching the show. "Please." Leora struggled to her feet. Her legs felt weak, unsteady. "Just tell me what I did wrong. I can fix it." "You can't fix being born." Calder's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "You can't fix what you are." "What am I?" "A mistake." The word hit her harder than his fists would have. She staggered backward, her heel catching on a sprinkler head. She went down again, her palms scraping against the concrete walkway. Above them, the window slid open. Nolan's voice carried across the yard, quiet but firm. Calder, that's enough. Is it? Calder looked up at his father. Is it really enough? Because I'm tired of pretending. Aren't you tired of pretending, Dad? Nolan's silence stretched like a noose. Ruth leaned forward. She's always been difficult. You know that. Always been difficult. The phrase hit Leora like ice water. How many times had she heard those words whispered in kitchen corners, muttered over dinner tables? How many times had she convinced herself she was imagining things? See. Calder spread his arms wide. Even Mom's tired of defending you. Leora looked up at the window. Her mother's face was stone. No warmth, no recognition. Just cold observation. I never asked to be here, Leora said quietly. Finally. Calder clapped his hands once. Finally, some truth. You never asked to be here, and we never asked for you to stay. The sound of a car engine broke through the night. Headlights swept across the yard as a police cruiser turned onto Copperwood Lane. Martha Dellinger stood on her porch in her bathrobe, pointing toward the Keene house. Shit. Calder ran his hands through his dark hair. Just great. 2 officers climbed out of the patrol car. The older one, a stocky man with gray at his temples, approached slowly. His younger partner hung back by the vehicle. Evening, folks. The older officer's voice was neutral, professional. We got a call about a disturbance. Calder immediately shifted. His shoulders relaxed. His face smoothed into something reasonable and concerned. Officer, thank God you're here. My sister, she. He gestured helplessly. She just snapped. Snapped how? She started screaming, throwing things. She's been having episodes lately. Violent ones. Calder's voice carried just the right note of worried family member. I was trying to calm her down when she ran outside. Leora stared at him. The transformation was perfect, complete. This wasn't the snarling animal who dragged her from her bed. This was the golden son, the responsible older brother dealing with his unstable sibling. That's not what happened, she said. The officer looked at her, taking in her soaked pajamas, her muddy knees, her tangled hair. What's your version, miss? He dragged me out here. He was yelling about how I don't belong, how I'm not family. She's delusional. Ruth's voice floated down from the window. Officer, she's been having these breaks from reality. We've been trying to get her help. The younger officer stepped forward. Ma'am, could you come down here, please? I'd like to speak with you. Of course. Ruth disappeared from the window. A moment later, she emerged from the house, Nolan close behind her. She'd thrown on a robe and slippers, but her hair was perfect, her makeup still in place, like she'd been awake for hours. This is hard for us to talk about, Ruth said, wrapping the robe tighter around herself. She's been unstable for months, paranoid, aggressive. That's not true. Leora turned to the officers. I was asleep. He came into my room and dragged me out here. Ask Martha, she saw everything. The older officer glanced toward Martha Dellinger's house. The elderly woman had retreated inside, her curtains drawn. She's dangerous, Nolan said quietly. We love her, but she's becoming dangerous. I haven't done anything. Leora's voice cracked. I haven't hurt anyone. The bruises on Calder's arms say different, Ruth said smoothly. Calder rolled up his sleeves. Dark marks circled his forearms, finger-shaped bruises that looked fresh. She grabbed me when I tried to stop her from running outside. Look what she did. Leora's mouth fell open. Those bruises hadn't been there an hour ago. They couldn't have been. How did you get those marks, son? The older officer asked. Like I said, she grabbed me. Her nails are sharp. Calder's voice was steady, convincing. I didn't want to hurt her back, so I just tried to restrain her until she calmed down. 3 against 1. The math was simple, brutal. Leora looked from face to face her parents, her brother, the skeptical officers. She was 17 years old, standing barefoot in a yard at 2 in the morning, and everyone was looking at her like she was the problem. "I need to see some ID," the older officer said. From everyone. Ruth and Nolan went inside to retrieve their identification. Calder pulled his wallet from his back pocket. Leora stood empty-handed. "My ID's upstairs," she said. "Stay put." The officer's tone suggested it wasn't a request. The younger officer stepped closer to her. He looked maybe 25, with kind eyes and careful movements. His nameplate read Monroe. "You're shivering," he said quietly. She was. Her whole body shook with cold and adrenaline and something darker she didn't want to name. "Are you hurt?" Officer Monroe asked. She looked down at her scraped palms, her muddy knees. "I'm fine." "Those don't look fine." "I fell." "Did anyone push you?" The question hung in the air. She could feel Calder watching her, waiting for her answer. Behind him, Ruth and Nolan emerged from the house with their identification. "I fell," she repeated. Officer Monroe studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded and stepped back as his partner returned. "Everything checks out," the older officer said, handing back the IDs. "Mr. and Mrs. Keene. Your son mentioned she's been having episodes. Have you considered getting her professional help?" "We've tried," Nolan said. "She won't go. She says everyone's against her." "Paranoid delusions are serious," Ruth added. "We just don't know what else to do." The older officer looked at Leora. "Miss, how old are you?" 17. "You're a minor living in your parents' home. They have the right to seek medical treatment for you if they believe you're a danger to yourself or others." "I'm not dangerous." "Son, what do you think should happen here?" the officer asked Calder. Calder looked at Leora with perfect brotherly concern. "I just want her to get help. I love my sister, but we can't keep living like this. None of us can sleep. None of us feel safe." "I understand." The officer closed his notepad. "Miss Keene, I'm going to recommend that your parents look into counseling options for you. In the meantime, I need you to keep the peace. No more outbursts, no more violence. Understood?" She nodded because there was nothing else to do. "Folks, try to get some rest. If there are any more incidents tonight, we'll have to consider other options." The officers walked back to their cruiser. Officer Monroe paused at the driver's door, looking back at the family scene on the lawn. His eyes met Leora's across the distance. "Don't give them the satisfaction of breaking you," he said, so quietly she almost missed it. Then they were gone, taillights disappearing around the corner. Ruth and Nolan headed back inside without a word. Calder lingered on the porch, his reasonable mask slipping back into cruelty. "See how easy that was," he said. "See how nobody believes you? That's because they know what you are." Leora wrapped her arms around herself. "What am I, Calder?" "Nothing. You're nothing." He went inside, leaving her alone in the yard. The porch light clicked off. One by one, the upstairs windows went dark. The house swallowed her family whole, leaving no trace they'd ever been there. She stood in the darkness for a long time, letting the cold seep into her bones. When she finally moved, it wasn't toward the front door. Instead, she walked around to the side of the house, to the garage where they stored old furniture and Christmas decorations. The side door was unlocked. She slipped inside, finding a dusty couch behind stacks of cardboard boxes. The garage smelled like motor oil and forgotten things. She curled up on the couch cushions, pulling an old tarp over her body. Sleep didn't come. Instead, she lay there replaying the night, examining it from every angle like a puzzle with missing pieces. The bruises on Calder's arms, Ruth's perfect appearance, Nolan's careful silence, the way they'd all known exactly what to say to the police. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned, but why? What had she done to deserve this? She tried to remember the last few days, looking for some trigger, some mistake that had set this in motion. Nothing came to mind. She'd gone to school, done her homework, eaten dinner with them like always, like always. The phrase stuck in her mind. When had dinner felt normal? When had any of this felt like a real family? She thought about the photo albums Ruth kept on the living room shelves. Hundreds of pictures of the Keene family through the years. Calder's first steps, his birthday parties, his graduation from high school. Nolan teaching him to ride a bike. Ruth braiding his hair when it was long. Where were her pictures? There were a few scattered throughout the albums, awkward school photos tucked between pages, holiday shots where she stood slightly apart from the others. But no first steps, no birthday celebrations, no tender moments between parent and child. She'd always assumed that was normal. Some families were more affectionate than others, right? Some parents were more demonstrative. But tonight, watching them stand at that window, she'd seen the truth in their faces. They weren't just unaffectionate. They were strangers. The realization settled over her like the tarp-heavy, suffocating, but strangely warm. Because if they were strangers, then their cruelty meant nothing. If she'd never been their daughter, then their rejection couldn't destroy her. She closed her eyes and made herself a promise in the darkness of the garage. She wouldn't forgive them for this. Not ever. She wouldn't forget. And she wouldn't let them break her, whatever game they were playing, whatever reason they had for keeping her here while making her feel unwanted. She would survive it. She would outlast it. She would win. 8 months later, Leora carried the last box of her belongings down to the sidewalk. The June sun beat down on her shoulders as she loaded everything she owned into Ava Corbin's dented Honda Civic. 2 boxes of clothes, a backpack full of books, and a small wooden jewelry box her grandmother had given her before she died back when Leora was too young to understand that she was the only one who seemed to miss the old woman. "That's it?" Ava asked, slamming the trunk closed. "That's it." Leora didn't look back at the house on Copperwood Lane. She'd said her goodbyes that morning, if you could call Ruth's silent nod and Nolan's grunted goodbye. Calder had been nowhere to be found, probably sleeping off another night of drinking. Good. Ava slid into the driver's seat. That place gave me the creeps anyway. Ava Corbin worked at the coffee shop downtown, pulling espresso shots and rolling her eyes at difficult customers with equal skill. She had dark hair cut in a sharp bob, tattoos covering both arms, and the kind of smart mouth that got her in trouble at least twice a week. She was also the first person who'd ever treated Leora like a real friend instead of a charity case they'd met 3 months ago when Leora started coming to the coffee shop after school, ordering the cheapest thing on the menu and making it last for hours while she did homework. Ava had noticed her counting quarters for a refill one afternoon and simply brought her a free coffee. "Looks like you need it more than we need the money," she'd said. IT was the first act of casual kindness Leora could remember receiving in years. "So where to, birthday girl?" Ava started the engine. "Stop calling me that." But Leora was smiling. Her 18th birthday had been 3 days ago. Ruth had made a cake store-bought, with generic white frosting, and they'd sat around the kitchen table for 10 awkward minutes while she opened her gift. $20 cash in a card that said "Happy Birthday" in gold script. $20. Ava had said when Leora told her, "Wow, they really went all out. It's enough for the security deposit on that studio." "Barely. That place is a dump, you know." "It's my dump." The studio apartment was above Murphy's Laundromat on 3rd Street, a tiny space with water stains on the ceiling and a kitchenette that consisted of a hot plate and a mini fridge. The bathroom was down the hall, shared with 3 other tenants. It cost $350 a month, which seemed impossible until Leora factored in her new job. Pike Welding and Fabrication sat on the industrial side of town, housed in a corrugated metal building that looked like it had been there since the 1940s. The owner, Gideon Pike, was a gruff man in his 60s who'd lost 3 fingers to a cutting torch and walked with a permanent limp from a scaffolding accident. He paid cash, asked no questions about work permits or previous experience, and expected his employees to learn fast or find another job. You ever welded before? He'd asked during Leora's interview, which consisted of walking into the shop and asking if they were hiring. No. You scared of getting burned? No. You willing to work 10-hour shifts? Yes. Good. Show up Monday at 6. Wear long pants and closed-toe shoes. Everything else I'll teach you. It wasn't much of an interview, but it was enough. Gideon had grown up poor himself, sleeping in cars and abandoned buildings until he was old enough to work. He recognized hunger when he saw it, and Leora was starving for independence. The first week nearly killed her. Welding was hot, difficult work that required steady hands and complete concentration. The protective gear was heavy and uncomfortable. The fumes made her dizzy. Her arms ached from holding the torch steady for hours at a time. But every blister, every burn, every muscle cramp felt like freedom. You're getting good at this, Gideon told her at the end of her second week. He examined the seam she'd just finished on a steel gate. Clean lines, good penetration. Most people take months to get welds this tight. Thank you. You got plans for this job? Some people see welding as a stepping stone to something else. Leora wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her glove. I like working with my hands. I like building things that last. Good answer. Gideon nodded toward the corner of the shop, where a heavy bag hung from the ceiling beams. You ever box? No. Might want to think about it. You got anger in you. I can see it. Boxing teaches you what to do with anger, how to use it instead of letting it use you. That afternoon, after her shift ended, Leora walked to Murphy's gym 3 blocks from her apartment. It was a no-frills place that smelled like sweat and disinfectant, filled with serious fighters and weekend warriors. The owner, a former heavyweight named Danny Murphy, looked her up and down when she asked about membership. You ever been in a fight? Once. The night with Calder didn't really count, but it was the closest thing she had to experience. Win or lose. I survived. Good enough. Membership's $40 a month. That includes basic classes and open gym time. You want personal training, that's extra. Just the membership. Fair enough. But I'll give you some free advice. Anger won't make you a good fighter. Control will. Leora paid her $40 and spent the next 2 hours learning how to wrap her hands properly. The heavy bag felt solid under her gloves, absorbing each punch with a satisfying thud. By the time she finished, her knuckles were raw and her shoulders screamed. But her mind was clearer than it had been in months. The routine took shape quickly. Up at 5:30. Work by 6, home by 6:30. Gym until 8, then homework and sleep. The days blurred together in a haze of sparks and sweat and small victories. Her body grew stronger, her hands steadier. The fear that had lived in her chest since that night in February began to fade. 3 months into her new life. She ran into Gideon at the grocery store on a Sunday morning. He was buying coffee and cigarettes, looking older and more tired in civilian clothes. Leora, how you doing, kid? Good. Just getting some food. He glanced at her basket rice, beans, peanut butter, generic brand everything. You eating okay? I'm fine. Yeah, I used to be fine too. Lived on crackers and water for 2 years when I first got out of my parents' place. He studied her face. They kick you out, or did you leave on your own? The question caught her off guard. She'd gotten used to people assuming her independence was a choice rather than a necessity. I left. Good for you. Takes guts to walk away from a bad situation. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. You know, I grew up in a house where I wasn't wanted either. How did you know? Kid, you got the look. Same look I had at your age. Like you're ready to fight the whole world just to prove you deserve to exist. He pulled a pack of cigarettes from his jacket pocket. The thing about fighting the world is you can't win, but you can outlast it. You can build something better. How? Same way you build anything. One piece at a time. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in the cereal aisle with his words echoing in her head point one piece at a time. Her apartment was one piece small, but hers. Her job was another piece, proving she could support herself. Boxing was a third piece, teaching her that she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. But the fourth piece came unexpectedly in the form of a town barbecue 3 weeks later. Ava had convinced her to go. Come on, it's the 4th of July. Everyone will be there. Free food, live music, fireworks. What's not to love? I hate crowds. You hate your family. Crowds are fine. Ava grabbed Leora's arm. Besides, I want people to see how good you look. You're like a whole different person than you were in February. It was true. For months of welding and boxing had changed her body, but more than that, they'd changed how she carried herself. She stood straighter now, moved with more confidence. The hollow look in her eyes had been replaced by something sharper, more focused. The barbecue was held in Riverside Park, the whole town spread out on blankets and lawn chairs under the oak trees. Leora hadn't been to a community event since high school, and walking through the crowd felt like entering a foreign country. People she recognized from school or the grocery store nodded politely, but she could see the curiosity in their faces. Where had she been? What was she doing now? Why did she look so different? She was sampling potato salad from the Methodist church booth when she heard her name. Leora Keene. She turned to find Mrs. Patterson, her old English teacher, beaming at her with genuine warmth. My goodness, look at you. You look wonderful. So strong and healthy. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. What are you doing with yourself these days? I heard you moved out on your own. I'm working at Pike Welding, learning the trade. How exciting! And you look so confident. I have to say, you seem much happier than you did in school. Before Leora could respond, she felt eyes on her back. She turned to see Ruth, Nolan, and Calder standing near the bandstand, watching her conversation with poorly concealed irritation. Oh, Mrs. Patterson followed her gaze. Well, I should probably let you get back to your family. They're not my family. The words slipped out before Leora could stop them. Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose in surprise. I mean, we don't really talk anymore, Leora backtracked. I'm here with my friend. She gestured toward Ava, who was flirting with the bass player in the local band. Mrs. Patterson nodded understandingly. Sometimes we have to make our own families, she said gently. The people who truly see us and support us aren't always the ones we share blood with. After Mrs. Patterson moved on, Leora tried to enjoy the rest of the barbecue, but she could feel the Keenes watching her, tracking her movements through the crowd. When she laughed at one of Ava's jokes, she saw Ruth whisper something to her husband. When she helped an elderly man carry folding chairs to his car, she caught Calder staring at her with something that looked like hatred. The confrontation came as the sun was setting and the crowd was thinning out. Leora was throwing away paper plates when Calder appeared beside her, swaying slightly on his feet. He'd been drinking, she could smell it on his breath. Well, look who decided to show her face. Hello, Calder. Don't hello me. You think you're something special now, walking around like you own the place. People were starting to stare. Leora kept her voice low and steady. I'm just enjoying the barbecue. Right, just like you're just working and just living in that shithole apartment. His voice was getting louder. You think people don't talk? You think we don't know what you're up to? What am I up to? Playing the victim. Poor little Leora, kicked out by her mean family. Except that's not what happened, is it? A small crowd was gathering now. Leora recognized faces from the neighborhood, from her high school classes, all watching, waiting to see what would happen. What happened, Calder? Tell everyone what really happened. You left because you couldn't handle being called out on your bullshit. You left because you knew we were tired of your drama. Is that what you tell people? Ruth and Nolan had joined the crowd now, standing behind their son with matching expressions of pained dignity. The perfect family, dealing with their difficult daughter in public. "We don't have to tell people anything," Ruth said quietly. "They can see for themselves how you've changed, how angry you've become." Angry. Leora almost laughed. "You think I'm angry?" "Look at yourself," Nolan said. "Look how you're dressed, how you're standing. You're looking for a fight." Leora was wearing jeans, work boots, and a plain t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Her hands were clean but calloused from work. She looked exactly like what she was, a young woman who worked hard for a living. "I'm not looking for a fight," she said, "but I'm not afraid of one either." Calder stepped closer. You should be very afraid." "Why? Because you'll drag me out of bed again? Because you'll tell more lies to the police?" The crowd murmured at that. Leora could see people exchanging glances, processing this new information. "Because you're alone now," Calder said. "No family, no real friends. Just you and that dump you call home and that dead-end job." "You're right," Leora said. "I am alone. But you know what? Alone is better than being surrounded by people who hate me." "We don't hate you," Ruth said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Really? Then why did you stand at that window and watch him hurt me? Why didn't you stop him?" "Because you needed to learn." What did I need to learn, Mom?" Ruth flinched at the word Mom, as if it was a curse. "That actions have consequences," she said finally. "What actions? What did I do that was so terrible you had to punish me like that?" Silence. Ruth looked at Nolan, who looked at Calder, who looked at the ground. "I'll tell you what I did," Leora continued. "I existed. I took up space in your house, ate your food, wore clothes you bought me. I committed the terrible sin of needing things from people who were supposed to care about me. That's not—" Calder started. "Let me ask you something." Leora cut him off. She looked directly at the crowd, addressing them as much as her family. "How much do you all know about Calder? About his job situation? His gambling problems? His arrest last month for starting a fight at Murphy's bar?" Calder's face went white. "Shut up." "Or how about the money that's been disappearing from Dad's company? The pension fund that's somehow short a few $1,000s. "You don't know what you're talking about," Nolan said, but his voice was shaky. "Don't I?" Leora smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Funny thing about living on your own, you learn to pay attention to details. You learn to do research. You learn that public records are public for a reason." The crowd was hanging on every word now. These were people who'd known the Keene family for years, who'd seen them as upstanding members of the community. This was gossip gold. "You want to know what I've been up to, Calder? I've been learning. I've been growing. I've been building a life where nobody can hurt me just because they feel like it." She looked around the crowd, meeting their curious stares with steady confidence. "But some of you have been busy too, telling lies, spreading stories about how unstable I am, how dangerous, how I threaten my poor, innocent family." Ruth's face was flushed red. "Leora, stop this." "Why? Because you're embarrassed? Because people are finally seeing what you really are." "We took you in," Ruth hissed. "We gave you a home when nobody else wanted you. And you never let me forget it, did you?" The admission hung in the air like smoke. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, processing this glimpse behind the Keene family's perfect facade. "That's enough." Nolan grabbed Calder's arm. "We're leaving." "Good idea," Leora said. "Give people something else to talk about." As the Keenes walked away, the crowd slowly dispersed. But Leora could hear the whispers starting, could see the way people looked at her differently now. Some with sympathy, others with curiosity, a few with the kind of respect reserved for people who stand up for themselves. Avi appeared at her elbow, holding 2 beer bottles. "Holy shit," she said. That was incredible. Was it? Are you kidding? You destroyed them. Completely destroyed them. Ava handed her a beer. What was that about public records? I may have done some research. What kind of research? Leora took a long drink. The kind that's going to make their lives very interesting. You're scary when you're angry. I like it. They walked home through the warm summer evening, past houses full of families and friends and people who belonged somewhere. But for the first time in her life, Leora didn't feel like she was missing out on something. She felt like she was building something better, something that was entirely her own. The first police report was filed 2 weeks after the barbecue. Leora was pulling a double shift at the welding shop when Officer Monroe appeared in the doorway, his expression apologetic but professional. Miss Keene, I need to speak with you about an incident report. Gideon looked up from the steel beam he was cutting. This about work? No, sir, it's personal. Monroe removed his hat. Leora, your brother filed a complaint this morning. He says you keyed his car sometime last night. Leora set down her torch and lifted her welding mask. I worked until 11 last night. Then I went home and went to sleep. Can anyone verify that? Gideon can verify I was here until 11. After that, I was alone. Monroe nodded, making notes. The damage was reported at about midnight. Your brother says he saw you leaving the area around that time. My brother lies. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious truth. Leora pulled off her work gloves. Officer Monroe, how long have you been on the force? For years. Do you remember the night you came to our house? February 8th. Monroe's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. I remember. Do you remember what you told me? I remember. Gideon was watching this exchange with interest. What's going on here? My family is trying to cause problems for me, Leora said simply. This is just the beginning. Monroe closed his notepad. Leora, I have to investigate every complaint that gets filed. But I also want you to know that I'm paying attention to patterns. If you understand what I mean. I understand. After he left, Gideon put down his tools and motioned for Leora to follow him to his office. It was a cluttered space filled with invoices, safety manuals, and coffee-stained blueprints. Sit down and tell me what's really going on. So she did. She told him about the night Calder dragged her outside, about the lies her family had told the police, about the confrontation at the barbecue. Gideon listened without interruption, his weathered face growing darker as the story unfolded. Son of a bitch, he said when she finished. They're trying to set you up. I know. What are you going to do about it? What can I do? It's 3 against 1, just like before. Gideon leaned back in his chair. You know, when I was your age, I had a similar problem. Different family, same bullshit. My old man used to beat the hell out of me, then tell the neighbors I was the violent one, said I was dangerous, uncontrollable. What did you do? I got smart. I stopped reacting and started collecting. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out an old manila folder. Documentation, photographs, witness statements, evidence. Evidence of what? Everything. Every lie they told, every manipulation they tried. When my father finally pushed too far, I buried him with facts. How? That's not important. What's important is that you understand something they're not going to stop. People like this don't give up until they win or until they're destroyed. And you're not going to win by being the victim. The second report came a week later. This time it was Ruth who filed, claiming Leora had called her at home and made threats. Officer Monroe delivered the news with visible frustration. She says you called yesterday around 3 in the afternoon and told her you were going to make her sorry for taking you in. I was at work yesterday at 3. I can show you my time card. I figured, but I still have to document it. How many of these reports can they file? As many as they want, until I have evidence that they're false. What kind of evidence? Monroe hesitated. The kind I can't help you get. That evening, Leora stopped by the coffee shop where Ava worked. The evening shift was slow, just a few college students with laptops and an elderly man reading the newspaper. "You look like shit," Ava said by way of greeting. "Thank you for that honest assessment. Seriously, what's wrong? You look like someone died." Leora explained the police reports while Ava made her a free coffee. Ava listened with growing anger, her movements becoming sharper and more aggressive as she steamed milk and pulled shots. "Those fucking bastards," she said finally. "They're trying to frame you." "I know. So what are we going to do about it?" "We? You think I'm going to let them destroy my friend?" Ava slammed the espresso portafilter against the counter. "Hell no. We're going to destroy them first." "How?" "Research. Investigation. Fighting dirty." Ava grinned fiercely. "Lucky for you, I know how to use a computer, and I have a lot of free time." "Ava, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm volunteering." They started that night, huddled around Ava's laptop in her studio apartment above a vintage clothing store. The internet was a treasure trove of public information. If you knew where to look, court records were their first stop. Calder's arrest for assault was a matter of public record, along with 2 previous charges that had been dropped. One for drunk and disorderly conduct, another for harassment of an ex-girlfriend. "Your brother's a real prize," Ava muttered, scrolling through the documents. "Look at this. He owes money to 3 different creditors. Credit cards, a payday loan company, and something called Riverside Holdings." "What's Riverside Holdings?" "Let me check." Ava opened a new browser tab. "Oh, interesting. It's a private lending company. The kind that charges very high interest rates to people with bad credit. Loan sharks. Legal loan sharks. The worst kind." They kept digging. Property records showed that Ruth and Nolan had taken out a second mortgage on the house 6 months ago. Bank records were harder to access, but a credit report obtained through less than legal means showed multiple late payments and maxed out credit cards. "They're broke," Ava said. "Completely broke." "How is that possible? Dad has a good job." "About that." Ava pulled up another document. "This is from the state auditor's office. There's an ongoing investigation into pension fund irregularities at your dad's company. Several employees have been suspended pending the outcome." Leora's heart raced. "Is Dad one of them?" "Nolan Keene, suspended without pay effective 2 weeks ago." They worked until dawn, building a file that painted a very different picture of the Keene family than the one they presented to the world. By sunrise, they had documentation of financial troubles, legal problems, and a pattern of deception that went back years. "This is enough to destroy them," Ava said, stretching her cramped shoulders. "Is it enough to stop them?" Only one way to find out. The 3rd police report never came. Instead, Leora was woken at 6 in the morning by pounding on her apartment door. She stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, to find Officer Monroe standing in the hallway with a grim expression. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "Your family filed a restraining order request yesterday. They're claiming you've been stalking them, threatening them, trying to break into their house." Leora's blood went cold. "That's not true." "I know it's not true, but they have evidence." "What kind of evidence?" Monroe pulled out a manila folder. "Photographs. They show someone who looks like you parked outside their house at various times. Phone records showing calls from your number to theirs. A written statement from a neighbor who claims they saw you trying to break into their garage." "None of that is true." "I know, but it looks convincing." Monroe's voice was carefully neutral. "Leora, they're building a case against you. A careful, methodical case. And if they succeed, you're looking at serious legal trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "Stalking charges, harassment, possibly breaking and entering if they can make that stick. He met her eyes. That's prison time. Leora sank into her kitchen chair. So what do I do? Officially, I can't tell you what to do. Unofficially, Monroe glanced around the small apartment. You need to be smarter than they are, and you need to move fast. After he left, Leora called in sick to work and walked to the coffee shop. Ava took one look at her face and asked her manager if she could take a break. They filed a restraining order. Leora said without preamble. Shit, based on what? Leora explained Monroe's visit, while Ava's expression grew darker. Fake evidence, Ava said. They're manufacturing fake evidence. How do I fight that? With real evidence. Ava pulled out her phone. Remember all that research we did? Time to use it. How? We're going to tell some people what we found. People who matter. The first call went to the local newspaper. The reporter was interested, but cautious financial irregularities and family disputes weren't exactly front-page news. The second call went to the state auditor's office, where a bored-sounding clerk took down the information and promised to look into it. The third call was different. Who are we calling now? Leora asked. Someone who specializes in high-interest lending practices. Ava dialed a number she'd found online. Riverside Holdings has a reputation. There are consumer advocacy groups that track companies like this. The woman who answered was very interested in what they had to say about Calder's loans and the methods Riverside Holdings might be using to collect them. She asked detailed questions and requested copies of all their documentation. We'll investigate this immediately, she promised. If what you're telling us is accurate, there may be violations of federal lending regulations. The fourth call went to the IRS tip line. You can report suspected tax fraud anonymously, Ava explained as they waited on hold. If your dad was skimming money from pension funds, chances are he wasn't reporting it as income. By the end of the day, they had contacted 6 different agencies, 3 advocacy organizations, and 2 journalists. The wheels of justice moved slowly, but they were moving. How long before something happens? Leora asked. Could be weeks, could be months, but something will happen. Ava closed her laptop. The question is, will it happen before they succeed in framing you? The answer came sooner than expected. 2 days later. Leora was walking home from the gym when she heard footsteps behind her. It was after 9 o'clock. The streets, mostly empty except for the occasional car. She'd learned to pay attention to her surroundings, but these footsteps were familiar. She turned to find Calder following her, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. Hello, sister. What do you want, Calder? Just to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Scared of your big brother. He was 20 feet away, close enough to talk, but far enough that she could run if she needed to. Leora measured the distance to her apartment building 2 blocks. Too far. What do you want to talk about? Your little investigation. Calder's voice was casual, but his eyes were hard. You think you're smart, don't you? Digging around in things that don't concern you. Things that don't concern me? Like my own family's lies. Family. Calder laughed. You still think we're family. We're not. You made that clear. Did we? Because you keep acting like you belong in our business. I don't want anything to do with your business. Then why are you calling newspapers? Why are you talking to government agencies? Why are you trying to destroy us? Leora felt her pulse quicken. How did he know about the calls? They'd been careful, anonymous. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I'm just defending myself. By attacking us? By spreading lies about Dad's job, about my personal business? They're not lies. Prove it. The challenge hung in the air between them. Calder took a step closer, his right hand still buried in his jacket pocket. You know what I think, he continued. I think you're angry because you finally realized the truth. You're not one of us. You never were. And all this investigation bullshit is just revenge. So what if it is? So you picked the wrong family to fuck with. Another step closer. 15 feet now. Did I? Because from where I stand, you're the one who's broke. You're the one with gambling debts and assault charges. You're the one whose daddy got suspended for stealing. Shut up. You're the one following me around at night like some kind of stalker. I said shut up. What's in your pocket, Calder? His hand twitched. Nothing. Show me. I don't have to show you shit. But he pulled his hand out anyway, and moonlight caught the blade of a hunting knife. Jesus Christ, Leora breathed. You destroyed us, Calder said, his voice shaking with rage. You should have stayed gone. You should have just disappeared. Put the knife down. Why? So you can call the cops again? So you can tell more lies? I never lied about you. You lied about everything. You made us look like monsters. I didn't make you anything. I just told the truth. Calder lunged. But Leora had been training for months. Boxing had taught her to read movements, to anticipate attacks. Welding had made her hands strong and steady. Living alone had made her ready for anything. She sidestepped his rush and caught his wrist as he stumbled past her. A quick twist, the way Danny had taught her in self-defense class, and the knife clattered to the pavement. Calder spun around, swinging wildly with his left hand. She ducked under the punch and drove her fist into his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping. Stay down, she said, but he didn't. He came up swinging again, his face twisted with fury and desperation. This time she didn't hold back. Her right cross caught him square in the jaw, snapping his head back. He fell hard, his skull bouncing off the concrete sidewalk. For a moment, the street was silent except for Calder's labored breathing. Leora picked up the knife and held it at her side, not threatening, but ready. Get up, she said. Calder struggled to his knees, blood trickling from his split lip. You're crazy. You're fucking crazy. Am I? Because the way I see it, you followed me with a weapon. You threatened me. You attacked me. Nobody will believe you. Won't they? Leora smiled, and it was cold as winter moonlight. Calder, you're a known violent offender with money problems and a history of harassment. I'm a working citizen who is defending herself against an unprovoked attack. Which story sounds more believable? I'll tell them you started it. I'll tell them you threatened me first. With what? I don't carry weapons. I don't need them. She stepped closer and Calder flinched. Here's what's going to happen, she said quietly. You're going to get up and you're going to walk away. You're going to go home and tell Mom and Dad that their little plan failed. Tell them I'm not the frightened girl they used to push around. This isn't over. Yes, it is. She leaned down until her face was inches from his. I was never yours to break, Calder. I was never yours to forgive. And I'm definitely not yours to threaten. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Calder scrambled to his feet, looking around wildly. You called them. I didn't have to. Leora gestured toward the apartment windows overlooking the street. Several had lights on now, faces peering down at the scene. But someone did. They'll arrest you too. For defending myself? I don't think so. The first patrol car rounded the corner, followed by two others. Calder started to run, but stopped when he realized how that would look. Officer Monroe climbed out of the lead car, taking in the scene with professional assessment. Calder on his knees, blood on his face. Leora standing calmly with a knife in her hand. Witnesses watching from windows above. Miss Keene, are you injured? No, sir. Mr. Keene, what happened to your face? Calder wiped blood from his mouth. She attacked me. She had that knife. Is that your knife, Miss Keene? Monroe asked. No, sir. It belongs to him. She held it out handle first. He pulled it on me when I refused to fight with him. Monroe took the knife, examining it carefully. Can anyone verify what happened here? Multiple voices called down from the apartment windows above. She was defending herself. He had the knife. He attacked her first. Monroe looked at Calder with something like disgust. Mr. Keene, you're under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon. That's not what happened. Sir, please turn around and put your hands behind your back. As the handcuffs clicked shut, Calder looked at Leora with pure hatred. You think you've won? This isn't over. Yes, she said simply. It is. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Ava called before 7, her voice breathless with excitement. Turn on Channel 5. Turn it on right now. Leora fumbled for her remote, clicking through channels until she found the local news. A reporter stood in front of a familiar building, Nolan's company headquarters. Federal agents raided the offices early this morning as part of an ongoing investigation into pension fund irregularities. Sources tell us that several employees have been arrested on charges of embezzlement and fraud, with more arrests expected. The screen showed men in handcuffs being led to waiting cars. Leora recognized one of them immediately. Her father looked older than she'd ever seen him. His shoulders slumped in defeat as federal agents guided him toward a black sedan. Holy shit, Ava said over the phone. They got him. How much did he steal? Keep watching. The reporter continued. The investigation began after an anonymous tip led auditors to discover discrepancies totaling over $200,000. The scheme allegedly involved falsified records and diverted payments over a period of 18 months. $200,000. No wonder the family was broke. There's more, Ava said. The next story was about Riverside Holdings. Federal regulators had shut down the company pending investigation into predatory lending practices and illegal debt collection methods. Several customers were seeking damages for harassment and threats. Your brother's loan shark just got shut down, Ava said, which means his debt is about to become someone else's problem. Will this help with the restraining order? Leora, after last night, there is no restraining order. Calder attacked you with a weapon in front of witnesses. Any judge who grants a restraining order after that would have to be insane. She was right. When Officer Monroe called later that morning, it was to tell her that all charges against her family members were being dropped in light of Calder's arrest. The district attorney doesn't see any value in pursuing false report charges when the reporting party is facing felony assault charges, he explained. Your family's credibility is shot. What happens now? Now you get to live your life without looking over your shoulder. But Leora wanted to see for herself. That afternoon, she drove to Copperwood Lane for the first time since she'd moved out. The house looked smaller than she remembered. The paint was peeling, the lawn overgrown. A foreclosure notice was taped to the front door. Ruth sat on the porch steps, looking lost and alone. She looked up when Leora approached, but didn't speak. Hello, Mom. Don't call me that. Why not? It's what I called you for 18 years. Ruth's eyes were red from crying. We gave you everything. No, Leora said quietly. You gave me nothing, and you made sure I knew it every day. We took you in when nobody else wanted you. And you held that over my head like a weapon for my entire childhood. Ruth stood up, her hand shaking. What do you want? Haven't you done enough? I want you to say it. Say what? The truth. Just once. I want you to tell the truth about what I meant to this family. Ruth's composure finally cracked. You want the truth? Fine. You were a burden. A constant reminder of Nolan's mistakes. Every day you were here was another day I had to look at you and remember what he did. What did he do? He had an affair with my sister. You're the result. The words hit Leora like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch. She'd suspected something like this for months. So you made me pay for his mistakes. We kept you fed and clothed and safe. What more did you want? Love, Leora said simply. I wanted love. Ruth laughed bitterly. Love? You think love is something you deserve just for existing. I think children deserve love from their parents, even unwanted children. You weren't our child. I was for 18 years. They stared at each other across the space between the porch and the walkway. Two women who had shared a house but never a family. Are you happy now? Ruth asked. Nolan's in jail, Calder's facing prison, and we're losing the house. Are you satisfied? Leora considered the question seriously. Was she happy? Did she feel satisfied? No, she said finally. I don't feel happy. I feel finished. She turned and walked back to her car without another word. As she drove away, she could see Ruth in the rearview mirror, still sitting on the porch of the house that was no longer hers. 6 months later, Leora walked past the boarded-up house on Copperwood Lane with Ava at her side. They were coming back from the gym, both of them sweaty and satisfied after a hard workout. Do you ever regret it? Ava asked as they paused in front of the house. Regret what? Not forgiving them, not trying to work things out. Leora looked at the empty windows, the overgrown yard, the foreclosure sign still taped to the door. Somewhere, Ruth was living in a one-bedroom apartment, surviving on social services. Nolan was serving 5 years in federal prison. Calder had plea bargained down to 18 months for the assault charge. No, she said. I don't regret it. Why not? Because forgiveness has to be earned, and they never tried to earn it. They walked on through the neighborhood, past houses full of real families, toward the life Leora had built with her own hands. Behind them, the house on Copperwood Lane stood empty and forgotten. Just like the people who had once lived there, Leora didn't look back. She never looked back anymore. She had one.